Hi friends! Okay, so today we're doing Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz, and today we're on Chapter 9, the failure mechanism, how to make it work for you instead of against you. And then he talks about basically, he's going to start talking about negative feedback and making sure you use that in a positive way to stay on course for your goals. That's kind of a big sum up of this. And then he's going to list 7 personality types that are the failure person's personality type. We're not going to break it into 7 chapters. I think we can all get this one pretty quickly, so we'll go pretty fast, okay? The human body has its own red light signals and danger signs, which doctors refer to as symptoms and syndromes. Patients are prone to regard symptoms as malevolent or fever, fever, pain, or those things are known as bad. What he's saying, actually, these negative signal functions are for the patient and for his benefit if he recognizes them for what they are and takes corrective action. So he's saying, don't take negative feedback as a bad thing, okay? Use it to stay on course for your goal. The failure type personality also has symptoms. We need to be able to recognize these failure symptoms in ourselves so that we can do something about them. And these symptoms, when then act automatically as negative feedback and help us guide down towards the road to creative accomplishment. So biggest thing, when you get negative feedback, make sure you're taking it to correct course and stay on track for your goals. They convince ourselves, okay, this is the big thing. Convince ourselves deeply and sincerely that these things do not bring us happiness. So he's going to jump into the failure personality types and things we need when we recognize them in ourselves to realize that doesn't bring me the happiness that I'm aiming for, that I'm shooting for, and I'm going to remove this from my personality. Okay? And he says that don't feel bad. Everybody has this. Even the most positive, successful personalities experience them at times. So the important thing is to recognize them for what they are and take positive action to correct course. So don't feel bad if you associate with all of them. Just start making the fixes. So the picture of failure. So here it is. Frustration, aggressiveness, insecurity, loneliness, uncertainty, resentment, and emptiness. Okay? So let's go really quickly here. Remember, one of the strongest urges in human nature is to react appropriately. We all want to react appropriately to the actual environment and the actual what's happening as opposed to bringing our garbage with us and putting our opinions on it. We can cure these failure symptoms not by willpower, so you can't just willpower it away, but by understanding, by being able to see that they do not work and that they are inappropriate. Okay, so number 1, frustration. So frustration is an emotional feeling which develops whenever some important goal cannot be realized or when some strong desire is thwarted. It is only when a frustration experience brings excessive emotional feeling of deep dissatisfaction and futility that it becomes a symptom of failure. So basically it starts a downward spiral. So frustration on its own is just part of life, but frustration that goes to a deep, excessive emotional feeling of deep dissatisfaction, and futility, that's when you're not helping yourself move forward. So that's when you want to stop it. Feelings of frustration, discontent, dissatisfaction are ways of solving problems that we all learned as infants. And then he talks about, you're uncomfortable, you're hungry, and this mystery hand just comes in when you're a baby and gives you a bottle or fixes what's wrong, changes your diaper. So you learn as a baby, if I'm frustrated, something else outside is going to fix it. This way of life works for the infant and for some children. It does not work in adult life. Yet many of us continue to try it by feeling discontented and expressing our grievances against life, apparently in hopes that life itself will take pity, rush in, and solve our problems for us if we only feel bad enough. So feeling frustrated and not moving forward, getting stuck, that's not going to help any of us. Thoughts and feelings go together. Feelings are the soil that thoughts and ideas grow in. This is the reason that you have been advised throughout this book to imagine how you would feel if you succeeded, and then feel that way now. So start taking on the feeling of feeling successful and feeling happy and feeling prosperous. How does that feel? And then keep going towards that direction. All these other, failure personality types, they don't feel good either. So just remember that. Trust your gut. If something doesn't feel good, that's not how you want to be living. You don't want to marinate in that. Number 2, aggressiveness. Excessive and misdirected aggressiveness follows frustration as night follows day. So he's saying these two go together. And he gives an example about somebody who wants to punch his boss in the nose, and he doesn't because he wants to keep his job. But then he goes home and he snaps at his wife and his kids, or he kicks the cat, and he may turn his aggressiveness upon himself in much the same way that a certain scorpion in South America will sting itself and die of its own poison if it's angered. So basically that can be self-detrimental. But this is something key to acknowledge. Aggressiveness in itself is not a bad thing, because he says a lot of times it's the steam, like you get an idea for something and you want to go after it. It's that steam that drives you, that aggressive, go for it, go after it energy. And that's not a bad thing, because that will help you reach your goal. However, trouble ensues when we are blocked or frustrated in achieving our goal. The emotional steam is then dammed up, seeking an outlet. Misdirected or unused, it becomes a destructive force. So aggressiveness, just make sure it doesn't turn into something bad. Okay, and then the failure type personality does not direct his aggressiveness towards the accomplishment of a worthwhile goal, or if his goals are unrealistic or impossible. The solution of this type person when he meets defeat is to try harder than ever and keep banging his head against that wall. Like, know when your goal is silly and just out of your reach, and maybe you gotta go back to the drawing board, and actually really you should be asking yourself, is this really something you want? And make a new plan. If it really is something you want, make a new plan. The answer to aggression is not to eradicate it, but to understand it and provide proper and appropriate channels for its expression. They indicate that providing a proper outlet for aggression is as important, if not more so, than providing for love and tenderness. So he's talking about these two sociologists. Anyway, they said at first they thought it was just love that everybody needed, but then they said, no. You also need a place to get rid of aggression. You can't let that bottle up. So everybody needs love and a way to get rid of aggression, to spend it properly. If you feel like snapping at someone, stop and ask yourself, is this merely my own frustration at work? What has frustrated me? When you see that your response is inappropriate, you have gone a long way towards controlling it. So basically, remember that thing that they talked about, when you see a situation and you want to react, pause first and make sure you're reacting to what's happening in that environment, as opposed to bringing in your own luggage from the past with you and putting meaning on something that may not even be. About remember the guy who was sucking his teeth after eating, and the wife was like all upset about it. Many automobile accidents are caused by frustration aggression mechanisms. So that has been going on forever. And so he says, switch your mind, and he says, the poor fellow, I love this fellow word, I gotta start saying it. The poor fellow has nothing against me personally. Maybe his wife burned the toast this morning. Maybe he needs to cook his own toast. But maybe his wife burned the toast this morning. Maybe he can't pay the rent, or maybe his boss just chewed him out. So benefit of the doubt when we're driving. Okay, safety valves for emotional stream. You need a safety valve for your excess and emotional stream. Emotional steam. All types of physical exercise are excellent for draining off aggression. Long, brisk walks, push-ups, dumbbell exercise is good. Anything that hits or smashes, like a golf ball, tennis, bowling, punching bag. And he said, frustrated women intuitively rearrange all the furniture in their house, basically spending that energy. Another good device is to vent your spleen in writing. Okay, so write a letter to the person who has frustrated or angered you. Pull out all the stops, like put everything in that letter that you're upset about. Leave nothing to the imagination, then burn the letter. Get rid of it. Now, there's other, Jack Canfield has an exercise where you can actually do it with the person and go through all these different stages to say what made you upset, why, how, and there's a whole process for that. But for this guy, he's like, just get it all out, burn the letter. And the thinking behind these is you want to make sure you're not carrying that energy with you, because you're the only one dying from that poison after the fact. No one else is still drinking it, just you. It's in you. So you want to get it out. The best channel for all aggression is to use it up as it was intended to be used in working towards some goal. So do something productive with it, or go work out and like spend those calories and get energized. Okay. Number 3, insecurity. The feeling of insecurity is based upon a concept or belief in inner inadequacy. If you feel that you do not measure up to what is required, you feel insecure. A great deal of insecurity is not due to the fact that our inner resources are actually inadequate, but due to the fact that we use a false measuring stick. Okay, so false measuring stick. So you're probably just fine, but you're measuring yourself against something that's totally ridiculously perfectionist. Imagined or ideal, perfect or absolute of the absolute self. So you're setting something that's just so unrealistic, so perfectionism, and then you got to start looking back. Why do I think that this is how I'm supposed to be? The insecure person feels that he should be good, period. But then but they should be thought of as goals. So being good, it should be a goal to be achieved as something to reach for, rather than I should be good. Like, I'm going to be good today. I'm going to do my best to be good. I'm going to like put energy and focus towards being the best version of myself I can be. But when I start saying I should be good and I put myself already there, I have nothing that I'm aiming for. Since man is a goal-striving mechanism, the self realizes itself fully only when the man is moving forward towards something. Man maintains his balance, poise, and sense of security only when he is moving forward or seeking. Remember the bicycle? That's the bicycle example. When you think of yourself as having attained the goal, you become static. You stay still. And you lose security and equilibrium you had when you were moving towards something. So again, we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be every day. We're not actually competing against other people. We're trying to be better than we were yesterday, or even better than we were an hour ago. It is okay, keep your feet on solid ground. It is insecure trying to stand on top of a pinnacle, okay, on the very tippy top. Mentally, get off your high horse and you will feel more secure. So like bring yourself back down to earth. You don't have to put on all these airs and fake things, and just be normal, be you. And this explains underdog psychology in sports. So a championship team that thinks of itself as a championship, they no longer have something to fight for, but something to defend. Whereas the underdogs, they're fighting to do something and they usually bring about an upset because they have nothing to lose. They're fighting to move towards that. So then he said, to fix that, he had a boxer example. He says, when you step into the ring, you aren't defending the championship, you're fighting for it. You haven't got it. You laid it on the line when you crawled through the ropes. So that's a good way of looking at it, is every time you get into that ring or anytime you get into a sport, you're fighting again to get it. Don't think of yourself as a returning championship and let your game slide. Okay, number 4, loneliness. All of us are lonely at times. Again, it is natural penalty we pay for being human and individual, but it is the extreme and chronic feeling of loneliness, of being cut off and alienated from other people, that is a symptom of failure mechanism. This type of loneliness is caused by alienation from life. It's loneliness from your real self, like who you really are, not all the fake stuff that we pile on ourselves and think that we have to portray to the rest of the world. Because of his feelings of alienation from self, human contacts are not very satisfying, and he becomes a social recluse. In doing so, he cuts himself off from one of the pathways to finding himself, which is to lose oneself in social activities with other people. So finding more about what do I actually like and what don't I actually, I don't like, I don't enjoy. And then we become interested in something other than maintaining our own shams and pretenses, because we're busy with other people on a common goal. And then we feel less need for pretense, and we unthaw and become more natural. And the more we do this, the more we feel we can afford to dispense the sham and pretense and feel more comfortable just being ourselves. Excuse me. Loneliness is the way of self-protection. Lines of communication with other people, especially in emotional ties, are cut down. It is a way to protect our idealized self against exposure, hurt, humiliation. So basically, you're cutting yourself off so you don't get any hurt. The lonely personality is afraid of other people. The lonely person often complains that he has no friends, there are no people to mix with. In most cases, he unwittingly arranges this. He made it happen because he was passive and he acted like everybody had to come and bring it to him, and he didn't contribute anything to the social situations. So regardless of your feelings, force yourself to get up in there. And he says after you take the first cold plunge, you're going to feel that you start like enjoying it and warming up to it. Dancing, bridge, playing piano, tennis, conversation. Here, it is an old psychological that constant exposure to the object of fear immunizes against the fear. So doing something you're afraid of over and over again gets you more used to doing it. So if you're actually afraid of doing public speaking or something, they tell you go join Toastmasters or go, do some of those, speak at church or do something, like put yourself out there, and you're probably going to suck at first and then maybe you'll get better. But if it's really something you want to do for some reason, then you just have to keep putting yourself out there, and it will, the fear immunizes against the fear. And then back to this person, the loneliness person, be an active contributor and you'll find that most people are friendly and that you are accepted. And then once you realize that other people are accepting you, then it enables that person to accept themselves. So I can't really help much on the loneliness thing because I just talk to everybody like literally all the time, but I get it. I totally get it. And even though we're in this like weird time right now, I'm sure there's ways that you can like give back and volunteer and connect with other people. So look for those ways, because if you just sit at home, hiding at home, no one's going to come knocking on your door pulling you out, okay? Especially not today. So make yourself available, like figure out what you can volunteer and figure out what you can do that interacts you with other people so you don't get loneliness. Okay, number 5, uncertainty. Whoops. Albert Hubbard said the greatest mistake a man can make is to be afraid of making one. So uncertainty, this is where you're standing still and you are just paralyzed. Uncertainty is a way of avoiding mistakes and responsibility. It is based upon the false premise that if no decision is made, nothing can go wrong. Being wrong holds untold horrors to the person who tries to convince. Oh my goodness. Being wrong holds untold horrors to the person who tries to conceive of himself as perfect. So this goes back to the perfectionist and everything's perfect and I have to have this whole show and everybody has to think everything's amazing with me. Let it go. Do not keep holding that, because then he's saying that, okay, he is never wrong and always perfect in all things. If he were ever wrong in his picture of perfect, all-powerful self would crumble. Therefore, decision-making becomes a life or death matter. So because he's so afraid of making mistakes, because he has to be perfect, he's put so much weight on perfect in his image, then it becomes a life or death matter, and then he gets paralyzed. So one way to avoid as many decisions as possible and prolong them as much as possible. So that's the procrastination that goes hand in hand with perfectionism. Another way is to have a handy scapegoat to blame. It's that person's fault. It's the economy's fault. It's the president's fault. It's everybody else's fault, but it's not my fault. So one is continually in hot water from impulsive and ill-considered actions because, they're blaming everybody else and they're not thinking things through. And the other is stymied because he will not act at all. So that guy's just paralyzed, he procrastinates, and he's so focused on perfect. In other words, the uncertainty way of being does not work at all. It doesn't work. Nobody is right all the time, except for, present company excluded. But nobody is right all the time. Realize that it is not required that a man be 100% right at all times. Huge. We need to let go of that. So the great brave Babe Ruth, okay, he had the most home runs and he had the most strikeouts. He held both records. And if he had been afraid of striking out, he would have never gotten to his home runs. Or maybe, but still, probably more than likely. It is the nature of things that we progress by acting, making mistakes, and correcting course. You cannot correct your course if you are standing still. You cannot change or correct nothing. So if you don't do anything, there's nothing to correct. So try your best, but honestly try your best. Don't just go out there trying to hurt people or not caring how what you do impacts yourself, your family, your friends, whatever. you can correct your course as you go. So that he's made this point a few times. You got to be going, you got to be moving in order to have the negative feedback and actually do something with it. Okay, only little men are never wrong. This is a nice one too. Another help in overcoming uncertainty is to realize the role that self-esteem and protection of self-esteem play in indecisiveness. Many people are indecisive because they fear loss of self-esteem if they are proved wrong. Use self-esteem for yourself instead of against yourself by convincing yourself of this truth. Okay, so this one right here. Big men and big personalities make mistakes and admit them. It is the little man who is afraid to admit he has been wrong. Okay, so you make a mistake, you admit it, you correct it, you fix it. It's the little man who like blames everyone and doesn't say that he's wrong, is never sorry. And then he has a couple of nice quotes. So Gladstone says, "No man ever became great or good except through many and great mistakes." Sir Humphrey Davy says, "I have learned more from my mistakes than from my successes." Samuel Smile says, "We learn from wisdom from failure more than from success. We often discover what we will do by finding out what we'll not do, and probably he who never made a mistake never made a discovery." So you got to try, you got to do something, or otherwise there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to improve upon. And then Mrs. Thomas Edison was talking of Mr. Edison and basically how he tried so many things, and did you ever get discouraged? And the answer is no, I am not discouraged, because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward. So look at it as, okay, that didn't work, but here, this one is going to work. And always be positive too. Expect a positive outcome. That's another big thing. Okay, number 6, resentment. When the failure type personality looks for a scapegoat or for excuses for his failure, he often blames society, the system, life, the breaks, the president, the economy, all kinds of things. So it's, and then he proves it to himself that he's been treated unfairly, and his attempt to make his own failure palatable by explaining in terms of unfair treatment, injustice. But so as a salve for failure, resentment is a cure that is worse than the disease. It is a deadly poison to the spirit, makes happiness impossible, and uses tremendous energy, which could go into accomplishment. A vicious cycle is often set up. Okay, so when you're resentment, all that energy that you're steaming in and you're marinating, and it's just not going in a positive place. And quite honestly, you're the only one who it's sucking you down. And anyone who is going to jump in with you and like listen to all of your moaning and groaning, quite honestly. However, if you have been wronged, go for what's right. Like, I'm not saying just lie over and let everybody walk over you, but be careful of the resentment. So like hopefully you never have a case where you have to go to court and do all that stuff, and that can be long and very just long. But if you do ever have that, then stand up for your right, but don't be resentful about it. Be looking for the truth and what's right. Okay, so so back to that, just don't be resentful. And resentment is a way that fails. So resentment is also a way of making us feel important. Many people get perverse satisfaction from feeling wrong. The victim of injustice, the one who has been unfairly treated, is morally superior to those who caused the injustice. So then they're making all this gossip and telling everybody and blah, blah, blah. And whether it's a real or fancied wrong, so whether it's a real or imaginary wrong or injustice, which has already happened, they just get sucked into it. Resentment is an emotional rehashing or refighting of some event in the past. You cannot win because you're attempting to do the impossible, which is change the past. So just remember, what has happened in the past, having a lot of resentment for it is not going to help you in the long run. That's why everybody has this point where you have to get to forgiveness. Like, it's great. Go back through all of the past, figure out what happened, who did what and why, and all this kinds of stuff. But don't get stuck there. Because at the end of the day, for you to live your best life, you're going to have to do forgiveness. And forgiveness is for you. It is not for them. So I'm not saying that you have to go and rebuild all these connections with people who have screwed you over. Absolutely not. I'm not saying that at all. And probably if I was like more of a saint, I'd say that you could, but I'm not there. What I'm saying is you have to have the forgiveness to let go of it for yourself. So keep that in mind if you start catching yourself having like a lot of huge resentment, because then it puts you into the victim mode and then you're giving away your power. So there's a whole thing thinking on that. Resentment creates an inferior self-image. Resentment, even when based upon real injustices and wrongs, is not the way to win. It soon becomes an emotional habit, so you get used to it. Habitually feeling that you're a victim of injustice, you begin to picture yourself in the role of the victimized person. Habitual resentment invariably leads to self-pity, which is the worst possible emotional habit anyone can develop. You do not want to have self-pity. Do not get there. And if you do, pull yourself out as quick as possible. Someone has said that such people feel good only when they are miserable. And they start going and looking for ways that, oh, that person did that. Oh, that person did that. And then they're going to win. They're going to win because you always find what you're looking for. But then you're losing because self-pity is horrible. Emotional habits of resentment and self-pity also go with ineffective, inferior self-image. You begin to picture yourself as a pitiful person, a victim who is meant to be unhappy. And so then you're going to have the self-fulfilling prophecy that you don't deserve anything and you're not worthy of having anything. And you just stay unhappy forever. Okay, the real cause of resentment. Remember that your resentment is not caused by other person's events or circumstances. It is caused by your emotional response, your own reaction. You alone have the power over this, and you can control it if you firmly convince yourself that resentment and self-pity are not ways to happiness and success, but ways to defeat and unhappiness. As long as you harbor resentment, it is literally impossible for you to picture yourself as self-reliant, independent, and self-determining person who is the captain of his soul, the master of his fate. That's Invictus. Go look up that poem. It's really good, really powerful. But it basically says, look, all of this is up to you. It is in your control, so you better start doing it. So the captain of his soul, the master of his fate. The resentful person turns over his reins to other people, right? That's giving away your power. We never want to do that. And also people that think, that life owes them a living, and then they become resentful when it isn't forthcoming. Like, life does not owe you a living. It doesn't. It doesn't. You have to get out there and start creating. But there's another part in where he talks about the 8 hours a day working and all that stuff. That's when you get stuck in the cycle. So we'll get to that in a second. So resentment is therefore inconsistent with creative goal striving. In creative goal striving, you are the actor, not the passive recipient. You set your goals. No one owes you anything. You go out after your own goals. You become responsible for your own success and happiness. And resentment doesn't fit into this picture because it doesn't fit. Because it's a failure mechanism. So resentment is not going to help you go get your goals and go after what you want and what you deserve and reach them. Okay, number 7, emptiness. We're almost there. We're almost there. Hang in there. Perhaps you read this chapter and thought of someone who has been successful in spite of frustration, misdirected, aggressiveness, resentment, etc. Okay, but so you're going to see people who you think are successful, but he's just going to say in a nutshell, by the time they get there and they have all the money, it's basically counterfeit because they are empty. They have emptiness. They don't actually enjoy anything. These people win the nut of success, but when they crack it open, it is empty. A person has the capacity to enjoy when they're still alive within him, finds enjoyment in many ordinary and simple things in life. Like enjoy the sunrise and enjoy the sunset and enjoy the smell of a flower in your yard. And that may all sound very funny, but when you start going back to the gratitude and being grateful for everything you have, like hot and cold running water in your shower, in your bathroom, in your kitchen, and things that we take for granted, then you're going to go, wow, this is pretty cool. And then you're putting yourself in a much better frame of mind, a much better state, and you're open to receiving more as opposed to everything isn't good enough and I need this fix and that, and you're bitching and complaining. That is not going to help you or anyone else. The truth is that joy is an accompaniment of creative function. So joy and creative function go together, of creative goal striving. Okay, so creative is in here. It is possible to win a fake success, but when you do, you are penalized with empty joy. So you don't feel fulfilled when you have that fake success. Those are the people who screw everybody over for money, and then they get a lot of money, and then they're just horribly unhappy in life. And you know them. You've met them. I've met a bunch of them. They have these beautiful, rich houses and these fancy cars and nice clothes, and everybody's kissing their butt to their face, and then eventually when they don't have any of the power and the what people are trying to get from them, they are so empty. They have no real friends. You know, you've seen it a million times. So that's not what we're going for. Okay. Life becomes worthwhile when you have worthwhile goals. Emptiness is a symptom that you are not living creatively. You either have no goal that is important enough to you, or you are not using your talents and efforts in striving towards an important goal. It is a person who has no goal worth working for who concludes life is not worthwhile. So make sure what you're working towards is something you want and that it's worthwhile. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and all of your talents. So emptiness is not a way that wins. The failure mechanism is self-perpetuating unless we step in and break the vicious cycle. And this is about the 8-hour thing. If life is just a treadmill, if we work 8 hours a day so we can afford a house to sleep in, so we can sleep 8 hours a day, so to become rested for another 8-hour day's work, why get excited about it? All these intellectual reasons vanish, however, when we do experience joy and satisfaction. When once we get off the treadmill, stop going around and around in circles and select some goal worth striving for and then go after it. So otherwise, you're just going to get caught in the rat race and you don't have any goals. And a lot of these people will talk to you like, you know, you're going to do your job up until the point where you can do that thing that's your passion, and when you can turn that into a career or a money-making business. So never let it go. Never get sucked into the 8-hour day, you know, because then you're just wasting your life. And even if it's just a hobby and like connecting with people and going to sewing groups or whatever you guys do, whatever is your passion, make sure you're finding it and doing it. Emptiness and an inadequate self-image go together. Emptiness may also be the symptom of an inadequate self-image. It is impossible to psychologically accept something that you do not feel does not belong to you or not consistent with yourself. Okay, we've heard this multiple times. The person who holds an unworthy and undeserving self-image may hold his negative tendencies in check long enough to achieve a genuine success, but then unable to accept it psychologically and enjoy it. He may even feel guilty about it as if he has stolen it. So that's why we always have to be working on our self-image and fixing it, because otherwise you get to the point of success and then you can't keep it. You sabotage yourself. This is self-sabotage that always comes when we don't feel like we deserve something. Good gracious. Okay, this reaction is common to, psychiatrists refer to as the success syndrome. A man who feels guilty, insecure, and anxious when he realizes he has succeeded. Okay, so success syndrome. Real success never hurt anyone. Striving for goals which are important to you, not as a status symbol, but because they are consistent with your own deep inner wants, is helpful. Striving for real success, for your success through creative accomplishment, brings a deep inner satisfaction. Striving for a phony success to please others brings phony satisfaction. So getting the fancy car because you think other people think you look, or you know, you're cooler with it, get what you want. Get what you want. Work for what you want. Figure it out. And it always goes back to having very clear, specific goals. That's all. We're always going to come back to that. He must focus his gaze through the windshield and look where he's going to keep primary attention on his goals wherever he wants to go. But don't get stuck on the dashboard because on your dashboard, it'll tell you when there's oil pressure is becoming too low or your car is about to overheat, you know. So all these negative feedbacks are on your dashboard. He's like, you don't focus on that. You keep looking out the window. You check in from time to time and take that negative feedback and you do something about it, whether you pull into a service station or a car mechanic or whatever. Also in line with that is another example. It's not in this book yet. Maybe it will be. But when you're driving, you're looking through the front windshield. You use your back mirror, which is a lot smaller, to kind of like look into the past and like use some lessons so that you don't make the same mistakes again. But a lot of people always use the driving and the front windshield, and that's why the windshield is so big and the back little mirror is so small, because you want to spend more time looking and building the front, the big windshield, and where you're going and your goals and going forward, as opposed to living in the past and the small, tiny little rear view mirror. Okay, how to use negative thinking. We need to be aware of negatives so that we can steer clear of them. And basically for golf, his mind glances at the bunker and the sand traps, but he dwells upon the green. So used correctly, this type of negative thinking can work for us to lead us to success if, so he's going to give us 3 things of using negative thinking, like negative feedback. So 1, we are sensitive to the negative to the extent that it can alert us to danger. So like, hey, pay attention to this and avoid it, or do something to correct it now, head on, like acknowledge it and do something about it. Number 2, we recognize the negative for what it is, something undesirable, something we don't want, something that does not bring genuine happiness. So we want to make sure we like recognize, okay, this is not good. We don't want this. Like fake friends who are just using you and sucking energy from you. I mean, you don't want to be lonely, but you don't want to have fake friends. So you're better off being by yourself for a while and finding people that resonate with you and having real friends that just want to be with you. Okay, number 3, we take immediate corrective action and substitute an opposite factor from the success mechanism. So remember all those success personality types, like find something and then say, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to start, working on some of the success personality types that he gave us in the last chapter. Such practice will, in time, create a sort of automatic reflex, which becomes part of our inner guidance system. So you're going to get used to this over time, and it's going to become easier and easier. Negative feedback will act as a sort of automatic control to help us steer clear of failure and guide us to success. So everyone, have a wonderful day and do something today that your future self will be thankful you did.